Hello everybody, I'm the Health the Game Channel. Welcome back to the New Order, the last age of Europe, and to a new playthrough where we're playing as the Republic of Ireland. Yeah, they've got content now. They have a tree, they have some not so great national spirits, and some good old lore. So let's go ahead and have a read of that first. The 20th century opened in a dark time for the people of Ireland, subjugated as they were by the overlords in London. With circumstances stubbornness allowed the Irish to have a state of their own once more, and for a time it seemed as though peace would be the way of things between the English and their former subject. Then the German Reich attacked. Through Warsaw, Paris and even London itself to the German boot march, and Erin de Valera, Prime Minister, leader of Fianna Fáil, and the Irish hero was faced with the choice of siding with Doom Power or making the Irish Republic's place in the New World Order assured through blood. The de Valera administration authorised the Irish invasion with German assistance of the region known as Northern Ireland, the only part of the Emerald Isle kept under British rule. On the back of the successful albeit bloody campaign in Long, Fianna Fáil hasn't merely come to dominate Irish politics over the past decade, but in effect become the sole ruling party. Fine Gael has withered on the vine, whilst the socialist Sinn Féin was banned outright. Yet not everyone is content with the state of affairs, especially Irish membership in the German-dominated Einheitspact, following the withdrawal of the German garrisons from northern counties. At the time of the West Russian War, control of the northern counties became increasingly difficult, necessitating the appointment of Neil Blaney as the Minister of Northern Counties. Through methods unknown to much of the government, he has maintained the boiling pot that is the region under control. FF dominance waned during the tumultuous times of the 50s, and whilst de Valera is well liked by the average Irishman, there are many who began to tire of his rule, and once small mistakes began to pile up slowly but surely. Thus, when Sean Lemass suggested that de Valera take the more ceremonial position of the presidency, where he could retain influence still, it was a trivial issue for the old man to accept, though he cautioned Lemass not to coalition with Labour. It must have come as an unpleasant surprise to the elderly revolutionary when the new Prime Minister did exactly that and formed the current government as an FF/Labour coalition. With de Valera powerless to stop it, and in the midst of disagreement, FF is starting to show even more vulnerability than before. Now, after a disappointingly narrow victory in the 61 elections, three factions of FF stand to contest the party's future. The de Valerists, supporters of the Conservative Old Guard and Lemass' support base; the hardliners, the aforementioned Neil Blaney, Catholic supremacists who are disliked fervently by the North, and Jack Lynch's awkwardly named Liberals, who, despite having little common with the ideology, are nonetheless the most reform-minded of the FF. Whilst these factions spatter over mundane politics, the situation in the northern counties, the largely Protestant former British territories, continues to degrade. Few have taken well to Blaney's governance, and terrorism is rife from Ulster to Derry. Three factions continue to gather strength under the noses of Dublin. The newest amongst these is the Real Irish Republican Army, a secretive splinter group of the old IRA, which is known to be aligned with the interests of Germany. There's also CRERI, also known by its less used name, the old IRA, an alliance of Irish nationalist and socialist groups opposed to German interference, and led by Seamus Toomey. And finally, there's Ulster Volunteer Force, a force opposed equally to Irish and German rule, led by the popular Presbyterian preacher Ian Paisley. Now, in 1962, Ireland has a future uncertainty set before it. One can say it has two visions for it: Fianna Fáil's vision of status quo and stability, or the vision of change of Fine Gael. Only good governments and luck can save the nation, so economically dependent by the interests of the right, and so politically torn on the side. But perhaps the world will find a way to bring this about. So our features for this playthrough: manage Fianna Fáil's inner affairs through all the means possible to avoid the worst things possible, or finally bring change to the country's political life. Lift Ireland out of poverty without running out of budget and the investors' trust, and handle the ticking bomb that is Northern Ireland as wisely as you can. Erin go Bragh, I think that translates to Ireland forever, possibly? Something along those lines. Wow, we have one military factory. That is absolutely fantastic. And let's jump in here and do batch production methods and vertical. Now we'll go for horizontal industrial organization. Oh, we do start off with 12 divisions, which is quite impressive. And let's just sit there, because I don't know if Derry... I don't know what's going to happen on Northern Ireland, and I have a funny feeling if anything happens, they'll probably get Derry rises up and joins the war. So I'm just going to sit behind there. Civilian factories, we have a couple left to build. We have a lot of building slots though, bloody hell, I've never seen so many states in Ireland, or provinces rather. Let's go ahead and start by building like 4 of those. It's going to take us ages to do it. But anyways, the shame of the giant. Eamon de Valera has long held a dream close to his heart, a dream of a united Ireland, free from Anglo dominance. During World War II, the then Taoiseach, I think that's how you pronounce it, I might be wrong, it's basically just the Prime Minister, accepted a deal with the devil to make his dream come true. Should the Republic of Ireland collaborate with the Nazi regime, the Germans would support them in the invasion of Ulster, which was just barely accomplished with the sheer amount of German manpower thrown at the Emerald Isle. Like all Faustian bargains, however, the price is rarely one worth paying. German mega corporations control vast sectors of the Irish economy, and countless paramilitaries in Ulster threaten a total revolt against Dublin. Fianna Fáil only holds on to power only through relentless political suppression, press censorship, and imprisoning those who speak out too loudly against the regime. Faced with increasingly lack of confidence in Valera's ability to govern, Fianna Fáil's supermajority in Nadale started to grumble. Sean Lemass, de Valera's chosen successor, kicked the old man upstairs to the largely ceremonial presidency. Lemass has since tried to steer Ireland out of the nightmare that is de Valera's twisted dream. However, should Lemass prove inadequate to the task at hand, those around him can convince de Valera to use the one real power available to his office, the ability to appoint a new Taoiseach. Get event paternal autocracy. We can begin addable projects in the Decisions tab. Okay, that's only going to take 7 days. What have we got in the Decisions tab? NIC. The Northern Irish Constabulary is a government agency that is tasked with the policing in Northern Ireland. Northern County Special Zone. That's what that translates to. Right, cool. That's what the abbreviation's for anyways. Officially a subdivision of the Garda, the NIC spent most of its time acting as the government's hand in dealing with the myriad paramilitary groups that infest northern counties. Somewhat Sisyphean nature of the task appointed to the NIC has left the organisation in semi-permanent state of being understaffed and underfunded, leaving no love lost. I've just noticed we've gone not at high speed. No love lost between the Constabulary and government, to which pledges its allegiance. Corruption is awful rife within the organisation, as they must sometimes make less than savoury deals to simply survive. So the opinion of ours is cordial. Oh, we've just got the Irish investment stuff. Right, we'll get back to the decision stuff. Sean Lemass found the lack of an official residence for the Taoiseach one of the most irritating quirks endemic to the Irish politics. Well, even the Bulgarian monarch, his only independent counterpart at the Einheitspark to meetings, could boast of a palace. He was stuck in his Dublin apartment. There was at least one advantage to the housing situation: his son Noel. The poor bugger actually lived in the building and carried out much the same tasks as Tsar Boris's servants. Whenever Lemass came home, he could find his dinner served and plates clean. Today the meal wouldn't be just for him, but for Charles Hoy too. While Lemass hoped that the night's discussion would not stray away from Noel's soup, he had defeated his own expectations by veering into the Northern County situation, while explaining the difference between stews in both parts of the country. Blaney. Lemass's English had acquired a brewery accent. If not for him and his, what do you call them? Blaney boys, yes. A nurse of a beer graced the Taoiseach's throat. Everything would have been fine after 61, but he had to insist on that fucking cabinet post. The Liberals too, you know, they helped ruin everything as well. Lemass's accusatory finger pointed vaguely in the direction of his son, Noel. It's probably Noel, actually. Why am I saying Noel? Bloody hell. Noel, don't ever forget, giving in to your enemies is a mistake. I love those pain in the arse, because of police, lynching Cornish, to cook up a deal with the Liberals. Look where it's got me. Now I have to bend over backwards every time I want to pass a goddamn bill. Augie, is that maybe it? Was in the process of interjecting with a depreciatory remark about the state of Fianna Gael, but he didn't get far before Lemass started him again. You, Charles, you're like a son to me. Apart from this boy here, you're the only man I can trust. I rely on you to save this party, no, this country. While his 34-year-old son made a much of protest against the description as a boy, Charles Hoggy quietly cringed. If the old man knew what was really going on, or maybe he did, who knows? So we have the Northern Three, or Dublin's Archbishop. hardliners. Oh, just the other coalition. I don't really want to work with the hardliners. Or do I want to work with the hardliners? Ooh. Decisions, decisions, decisions. Increase with these. Corporations will increase those. Let's do the Dublin's Archbishop. There's only one man in Ireland who wields significant power over the people in the government. This man is known as the Archbishop of Dublin, John Charles McQuaid. The Archbishop is a personal friend of De Valera and will definitely help us in our cause to rally the hardliners back to our side. If we can rally enough of them, we can definitely begin to take back the Fianna Fáil. However, there is one thing that stands in front of us. The issue of women's rights in Ireland is a subject that is hotly contested. Brendan Cornish and his followers have begun to campaign against the Magdalene laundries that are in Ireland. Those asylums have been created to make fallen women pure again and close to God. While the idea is seen as a thing of the past, it brings in large amounts of money for the hardliner cause. It is our best interest that these laundries stay open for the future. Okay, that's going to take 35 days, so nice, we can actually proceed on a little bit. So, Field Marshals and Generals. Oh, we have Carl O'Sullivan as our Field Marshal, and we have Pat Quinlan. We'll just go with that. Situation. A few blocks away from Leinster House, Jack Lynch and Frank Aiken sipped on a Fanta at O'Shaughnessy's cafe. Christ, Jack, this German stuff tastes like shit. The much younger Lynch had a stronger stomach, but couldn't disagree with the old dog opposite of him. The drink or the treaty? Aiken let out a laugh before raising his hand. The waitress had come with the bread. As she put it down on the table, Aiken's eyes widened with indignation. What is this? The young woman jumped back as Aiken examined the food. Rogan brought. What does this mean? Look at this crap. I could hit you over the head with this. It's like a goddamn brick. He turned towards the woman. Lady, can you bring us some decent bread? As the former cabinet minister screamed at her, the waitress tried to explain to him that there was no other type available, until Lynch intervened to calm Aiken down. While the girl managed to get away, Aiken didn't stop. Those Jerrys, they're everywhere, Jack, even in food. Why can't they leave us alone? Because Lamass won't stand up to them, and anyone who does ends up in jail in a jail cell. You'd think that after how many votes the Liberals and us got in the last election, he'd lay off a bit, but since last year he's jailed 800 more. For fuck's sake, this man will drive Fianna Fáil to ruin. Him and his buddy in need, Frank's euphemism for Neil Blaney, got a hearty laugh at Lynch. I mean, it's incredible, Jack. The last puts the trade unionists in prison, and damn near does that whenever H dumps all of his crap into our economy. But those stupid bastards at the Labour Party keep propping up the government. We can't get rid of him either. Not when Liberals keep saying they're only supporting the coalition. If he's still there, the world is a mess and we need to do something about it, Frank. Lynch sighed. If someone was going to lead liberalism back to the forefront, it was him. Frank was too old. Perhaps Fianna Fáil was too old a vehicle to do it as well. Yeah, we haven't even looked at the national spirits, to be fair. Or the rest of all my days. The amount of reading. What is this? Well, you picked the right place, Doherty. The force needs an honest cob like you. You could have chosen to stay in Dublin, have an easy career, but you weren't interested. You are here to fight the good fight. Solve cases, right wrongs, very well then. But Ulster isn't pretty. There's no sitting on a fence, you have to choose side. Take a brown paper envelope to look over all of the corrupt filth that goes on in Blaney's backyard. Or look behind your back every 5 minutes in fear of a prot or a provo trying to murder you. Inspector Amian Doherty pondered on the words which Chief Superintendent of Garda's Northern Counties Department had left him with 2 months earlier. Trooper Doherty transferred to Belfast for the pay rise. His daughter was getting married soon and paying for the wedding wasn't cheap. Perhaps he thought there was an element of careerism in it as well. Yes, success in cases here would make him friends back in Dublin. There was nothing wrong with that. Whatever his motivation, Doherty had come to the conclusion they weren't worth it. The counties which Doherty once helped unify as a volunteer during the war were a mess. Northern Ireland Constabulary themselves, supposedly part of the Garda, were unreliable as hell, and each day came with a new terrorist attack for some deranged faction over the other. Today was no exemption either. Dawn had barely broken when his presence was requested by radio. Another car bombing. Parking his German-made patrol car alongside the much older models of the Northern Ireland Constabulary, Doherty got out of the Daimler and headed to see the crisp remains of the Morris Oxford, cordoned off by the dozen policemen. Who was it? The inspector glanced at the NIC patrolman close to the vehicle. Rowry Bragh. I've probably said that completely wrong. A Seor Erie big shot. With the scorn of his voice, thought he could tell the man was a Protestant. Where do you want to start? There's a few witnesses to talk to, but you could also take a look at the car and registration first, or try searching for something meaningful in the rubble. Let's go check the remains. Oh my days. Can it stop? We're only the 16th of January. Even Doherty stepped around the bombed out hull of the car. It was covered in a black suit and the doors had been blown off. He tried to find anything that would tell him why it was done. However, all he saw was destroyed seats and steering wheel stuck in a tree. It was the work of terrorists. He could tell as the bottom of the car had been blown up. Across the road, a few officers had been in the process of trying to clean off and decipher the license plate. Car bomb, he muttered to himself as he walked around. Something kept nagging him in the back of his head. He knew that the IRA was basically gone and the Ulsterite groups were into that bold to bomb a car in broad daylight. However, if it was the Ulsterites, it made sense. They didn't even know who the poor sap was. It didn't matter now anyway. They had a job to do. He knew it was going to be hard to find something with evidence. So far, they had found a half a shoe, with the other half being destroyed. As Eamon did another lap around the car, something caught his eye. On the ground, reflecting off the sun, was a pair of glasses. Eamon stopped in his tracks and put on the gloves, picking up the glasses and putting them in a small bag. As he walked back to his car, he noticed witnesses being asked questions by police officers. He'd been assembled a little way down the road. As he got into his car, he gave himself a dilemma. He could either phone the station to try and find a connection to the car using the license plate. It was an older model, but should still check out. Eamon could also help with the interrogation, wherever he could be seen as unwanted due to his presence. Either way, he was going to find out why the bombing occurred. Let's ring the station. Let's track that the license plate. Oh, blinking egg. The Vanquish. James Dillian sat at his desk filling out paperwork. It was always the same for him, being the last one inside the Fine Gael headquarters. His desk was surrounded by photos of him and many of the fellow members of the FG. He smiled before remembering the truth of the party. They hadn't won an election in 22 years, longer than how old some of their party members had been alive for. He sighed and rubbed his temple. 22 long years of playing second fiddle to Fianna Fáil and the rest of Ireland. He looked at his watch. It was 11:30. James packed up his things into his briefcase before shutting off the lights and making his way to the main lobby. To his surprise, Liam Cosgrave and Oliver Flanagan had pulled some chairs out and had been in the middle of a conversation before they saw James and waved him over. The men had been discussing mostly personal things, such as their families. The point of Fianna Fáil had come up. Mostly the current issues with Liberals as Liam and Oliver talked. James listened. Once the two men finished, James spoke. Well, to be fair, I agree with both of you. Our time is coming. However, this is not the time to discuss this anyways. Anyways, do you lot want to go to the pub? Asked James. The two men nodded and they walked out of the headquarters. On the way, James thought to himself, he was going to retire soon. And Oliver seemed like the more qualified candidate. He could do much more for Ireland than I, believed James. And off they went. Off to the pub. And, you know, it's taken us that long, the Germans have just done their first focus. Brilliant. Oh, fuck. Hello, operator. Yes, I'd like to get connected to the central police station. Yes, that one, please, said Eamon Doherty to the operator on the side of the line. He was starting to sweat inside the small telephone booth that was located on the street. Unlike the more open ones in Dublin, the ones in Ulster had been much smaller. A product of the past, he thought to himself. He waited for a few moments to be connected. Luckily for him, he had enough change that was given to him from the station to keep the line alive for the next half hour. Eamon, aren't you in the middle of an investigation? Asked the officer on the line. I am, look. However, I found some evidence that could possibly solve this bombing faster. A pair of glasses and license plate number. It had been blown half down the street, but was thankfully in one piece. I want to see if you can find the car in the National Registry. The number is I5I-KY1568, asked Eamon. The line was silent for about 10 minutes. Their papers flipped periodically before Luke responded. I got the name of the bloke, an older car it seems, belonged to a dead member of Seor Erie. It says he died 2 years ago. Seemed to be quite a leader. We definitely have information there at headquarters on him, if you want to drop by, said Luke, trying to be helpful. If I think of it, I will. Thanks, said Eamon as he hung up. He then muttered under his breath, if the Seor Erie was involved, this could seem to be a much larger issue, especially if Bragh and the car are connected. Guess it's time to ask some witnesses. Oh, and we're probably going to have another bloody article to read. Oh my days, a special zone for special people. Far away from the busy streets of Belfast, the former Hillsborough Castle proudly flew the Irish tricolour. Converted into the main administrative office of the Northern Counties Ministry, it served as a residence for the province's governor, Neil Blaney. The company of IDF men guarding the approaches thought it no surprise that the black Mercedes made its way to the building's guardhouse at noon that Friday. For always did. Blaney's extra official meetings with other members of the cabinet, far away from the Lemassite halls of power in Dublin, was a secret to no one. Charles Hoggy, for his part, rather hoped their regular encounters would be more secret. Well, exactly Lemass kept trusting him as he did when it was so well known he'd go up to the NCSZ every weekend was a mystery to him, and what had unsettled him more every day. As soon as he got off his ministerial car, Hoggy was quick to spot the grey-clad figure storming up the building. Lieutenant Colonel Kelly, good afternoon. The IDF man opposite to him gave back a courteous remark, but ultimately continued his way. Hoggy knew it couldn't be good. He proceeded up the stairs to the Georgian construction until he got to Blaney's office. Donegal TD, working at his desk, looked the same as always, albeit his hair seemed to have receded a bit more than Hoggy remembered. His unmistakable gruff voice called out to Hoggy shortly after he entered the room. "Hello, Charlie." On his desk a picture of a fair younger Lieutenant Blaney in uniform from the war. "How are you, Neil? By the way, what was Kelly doing here?" Hoggy let his concern be expressed through the tone of his voice. Jim Kelly came back talking about his concerns over our friends. Nothing to worry about, really. Provided you got those signed Defence Ministry orders, don't you? Hoggy nodded. "By the way, Charles, I am doing more than fine, as are the counties." He let out a burst of laughter. "Now, what's our boss in Dublin up to, Charlie?" "Treason is afoot." Dun dun dun! So, current German funding is $15. What? Oh, 15 million. Oh, I was gonna say, what the heck? Oh, that's happened. Joseph McCarran correct? Asked Eamon. The man sitting across from him simply grunted and turned his head away. The question had been difficult so far, with the man simply refusing to answer at times, especially when it came to his occupation and what he was doing when the bombs went off. Well, he'd always walked the same route every day. I was turned around about to go inside my house before I heard the explosion. Next thing I knew, the car had gone up in flames and poor Bragh, I don't know how to pronounce his name, was dead, said McCarran, so nervous a sweat dripped down his face. "Do you know who this plate belongs to?" Eamon placed the plate from the car onto the table. Immediately, McCarran began to look around, before looking at the plate and shrugging, saying he'd never seen the car before. Eamon thought in his head, "Time to play the mean cop." "You sure about that? I assume you know what happens if we find out that you lie to an officer," said Eamon, trying to intimidate McCarran, who looked around one more time before leaning close. "Please, look behind you. I'm being forced to do this. I beg you." McCarran said this as his eyes darted around the street. Eamon turned and immediately saw figures watching them. As soon as he met his eyes with one in the front, they broke off and got out of the car. "Bastards!" yelled Eamon as he barked orders at another officer to continue the question as he raced his car and radioed it into headquarters. The stage just got a hell of a lot more interesting, thought Eamon. Now let's see what those shits are up to. Wow, this has been a lot of reading. Oh, and it Eamon de Valera looked through his bookshelves. He had read all of these books before, sometimes even twice or three times. Why would you read the book 2 or 3 times? Many of them had been one of historical nature, ranging from ones written by Plato to more modern books written by Thoreau. All of them had ideas that stuck with de Valera, photos that had lined his work desk as well, many of them with his former friend and now rival Sean Lemass. Photos stung de Valera, made him remember things that hurt him, the pain of a friend turning on him while the whole Fianna Fáil following, the bastardly coalition with Labour, which all was going to ruin Ireland. De Valera had decided to call Sean McConaughey to meet him in the office. While McConaughey's official abilities had been to serve the Taoiseach, he didn't interact that much with Lemass, so he was a perfect candidate for de Valera to talk to. It just doesn't make sense, Sean, how Lemass would just turn his back to me and take the whole party with it. I've become a ghost in politics, nothing more than a figurehead for the government. All of the power of the Taoiseach gone like that. Sean nodded along. I sold the country to the Germans, thinking they would respect our boundaries. Instead, we got forced to be policed by them and forced into the so-called Einheitspact. Unity, my arse. McConaughey tried to confront de Valera after hearing him rant. I don't think Ireland would forget you, Eamon. Your contributions to Ireland are eternal. Before Sean could continue, he checked the time and had to leave to meet Lemass. Alone, de Valera began to weep silently, hoping that he would not be forgotten. He wept as he realised how old he truly was. Oh my days, we haven't even finished the second focus yet. Oh my days. Oh, come on. Oh, the car weaved through the streets of Belfast, recklessly dodging traffic and swerving around pedestrians with only the barest regard for safety. Eamon followed closely behind his patrol car, sirens flashing and taking a little more care to avoid harming any bystanders. He was forced to duck a couple of times when one of the escaping suspects fired a pistol at his car, but their aim thankfully proved to be piss poor. Like stormtroopers, the case ended suddenly when the front of the fleeing car wrapped itself around a light pole. Both escapees staggered out of the wrecked automobile, one bleeding heavily from a cut in the head and found shelter in the back room of the bookstore. So even he knew that it would be suicide to go in there alone, so he hid outside the alley with his service pistol drawn and called for reinforcements. In a matter of minutes, half a dozen guard officers arrived, cordoning off the area and pointing weapons at the door. The shooters were silent to demands shouted by the guard over the megaphone, and they made no demands of their own. Just while the officers considered sending someone in the door, someone in and the door flew open and out-barreled one of the shooters, armed and bellowing wildly. He managed to hit one officer in the arm before being felled by the halls of bullets. As for the others, it appeared he bled out from his injury. 2 days later, a file appeared in Eamon's desk. The auto spies of the 2 dead shooters. They had no IDs on them, but prison dental records proving illuminating both men were Catholic and had ties to the CRA and the IRA, not the UDF. How far does this rabbit hole go? The RIRA power will decrease. Can we see the power? Oh yes, we can. The car bombing was a success. We're going to be doing investigations? Seriously? Closing time, right? This is the last thing we'll read today and we'll end the episode there. It's been a quiet night at Flattery's pub. Sales were low as always and there were very few new faces. Adam with Flattery, the owner, made enough to get by, but it was a struggle day in and day out. The church bells of Dublin doled out the time, midnight. Time to close up, Tom, and I'm told the one remaining patron still seated at the bar. Go home to your lovely wife and kids. I'm sure they miss you with all the time you spent here. Fine, I'll get what you hear, Tom chuckled. I'll tell Sarah you said hi. See you tomorrow. Adam shepherded Tom out of his cool night air. Tom was a decent fellow, all told, kind-hearted, hard-working, went to church on Sundays, not too well off. Adam supposed, but that was a lot of Ireland these days. Things weren't supposed to have been like this. His pa had fought in the war against the English when Adam was just a boy. He would always tell stories of how great Ireland would be when she reunited with her brothers in the north. That's all the television seemed to talk about. How great having the Isle back together was for everybody, even if the Protestants in the north hadn't seemed to get the memo. Long out for night, Adam caught sight of a VW car patrolling down the otherwise quiet street. Now, if that wasn't a metaphor for Ireland's ills, Adam thought to himself, the damn Germans had swept into Ireland with their fancy promises and offers of assistance, but everybody but the damn Taoiseach knew that they were sucking the lifeblood out of the Irish people. Half the businesses in Dublin seemed to be German run these days, and people had even had the gall to ask if he stocked any of the piss the Germans had the audacity to call beer at his pub. Adam sighed as he walked down the street towards his home. He'd always loved his home, as any true Irishman would, but though he would never admit it, it grew harder and harder every day to feel proud to call himself an Irishman. As if German beer is any better than a good Irish stout. Good old Guinness. So, still cordial, a little bit corrupt, so we can, okay. Raise officer salaries and root out corruption. Good, paramilitaries, okay. Ireland's had a tumultuous history, one that has spawned many paramilitaries and terrorist groups, okay. Anger, respecting a ceasefire and respecting a ceasefire. Their power, they're weakened and displeased. The groups are focused on the NIC. Let's go ahead and root out corruption. Let's root it out. But anyways guys, thank you very much for watching. Hope you enjoyed. And I shall be back very soon for some more. Till then, take care. Goodbye. The now.